Right now, somewhere in the world, a data center is being built that needs more copper than some countries produced in the 1990s. An electric car uses 4 times more copper than the car you're probably driving. Wind farms, power grids, defense systems, AI clusters, they're all piling onto the same metal. And here's the problem. We are not finding, permitting, or building new copper mines fast enough to supply any of it. Not even close. Today, we're going to explain why copper is quietly becoming the choke point of the modern economy, and why the next decade may be defined by who controls it. Welcome to Junior Mining Gold, the podcast where we dig deep into the raw, unfiltered world of building fortunes from the ground up. I'm your host, Dusty Nugget, the guy who's ridden more boom and bust cycles than a rodeo cowboy on a bull named Recession. If you're new here, we don't sugarcoat the grind. We expose the guts of business, from solo hustles to empire-building shares. Before we dig into the dirt, this episode is brought to you by juniormining.gold. Are you tired of missing the boat on the next big discovery? Juniormining.gold is your ultimate radar for the high-stakes world of small-cap mining. We track the drills, the assays, and the movers so you don't have to. If you want the edge in the outback, head over to juniormining.gold. Now let's get to the gold. Today's episode is all about the red metal that's about to choke the world's progress if we don't get our act together. We're calling it Copper's Coming Chokehold, the structural deficit that's got the globe in a vice grip. And I want you to settle in, because this isn't some fleeting price spike or hype-driven bubble. This is a deep dive into how copper went from a boring industrial staple to the strategic choke point of the 21st century, fueling everything from EVs and wind farms to AI data centers and defense hardware. We're talking a looming shortfall that could hit 10 million tons by 2040, forcing governments to stockpile like it's the Cold War all over again. Let me hand you a mental model right up front, because this is where most investors get dazzled by demand headlines and then blindsided by the supply reality. Copper isn't just a commodity, it's the backbone of the energy transition and digital revolution. But great demand doesn't magically conjure supply. Mines take 17 to 29 years to build in places like the US or Canada. Ore grades are dropping like rocks off a cliff, and geopolitics in spots like the DRC and Peru are turning production into a high wire act. If you remember nothing else from this episode, remember this. Deficits don't get fixed by wishing. They get widened by delays, droughts, and dumb policies. But for the smart operators spotting the gap early, this is where fortunes get forged. Let's rewind the clock on copper's market structure, because understanding the basics is key to grasping why we're staring down a barrel of tightness. Global mine production hit about 22.8 million tons in 2024, but demand was already outpacing it at 27 million tons, kicking off a deficit that's only gotten uglier. By 2026, forecasts from heavy hitters like J.P. Morgan pegged the refined copper shortfall at 330,000 tons, with prices blasting past $12,000 per ton on the LME. We're not talking balanced books here. Inventories have dipped to just 14 days of global demand, and that's with China sucking up 60% of the refined stuff. The demand side, it's exploding from 4 big disruptors that are rewriting the rules. First, the energy transition. EVs pack 62 to 99 kilograms of copper each, and renewables like offshore wind chew through 9.6 tons per megawatt, 9 times more than a coal plant. By 2035, EV and grid upgrades alone could add 4.3 million tons of annual demand. Second, AI and data centers. These power hogs run at 100 kilowatts per rack, needing 27 to 47 tons of copper per megawatt for wiring and cooling. A single hyperscale facility might gulp 50,000 tons. Third, defense. NATO's ramping to 5% of GDP on military spending, and everything from radar to artillery shells leans on copper. Price be damned. Fourth, Asia's boom. India and Southeast Asia are industrializing fast, potentially adding 3.3 million tons by 2035 as they build out power and construction, like China did 2 decades ago. Flip to supply, and it's a mess of rigidities that make you wonder if the industry's asleep at the wheel. Ore grades have tanked 40% since 1991, meaning more rock, more energy, more water for every ton, up to 16 times the juice compared to a century ago. Discoveries? Only 14 new deposits in the last decade, out of 239 since 1990. Permitting's a nightmare. 34 years in Zambia, 29 in the US. Chile, pumping 25% of the world's copper, is battling mega droughts and shifting to pricey desalinated seawater, jacking up costs. The DRC's output is booming but fragile. Export quotas slashed cobalt and tied copper by 50% in 2026, while Peru's strikes in informal mining are blocking roads and bleeding GDP. Midstream? China owns 45% of smelting, making the world vulnerable to their policies. Tech fixes like Rio Tinto's Nuton bio-leaching, unlocking low-grade waste with 85% recovery and lower emissions, or aluminum substitution, cheaper but bulkier and unreliable in batteries or subsea cables, help on the margins, but they won't plug a 10 million ton hole. S&P Global says we need to mine as much copper in the next 18 years as in the last 10,000 to keep up, even doubling demand to 50 million tons by 2035 for net zero goals leaves a 9.9 million ton shortfall. Robert Friedland nailed it. Demand's essentially infinite because copper's mandatory for survival and progress, but supply's been neglected while we chased bits over atoms. Banks like UBS are calling $13,000 per ton in 2026, with Wood Mackenzie estimating $210 billion needed for new capacity. This isn't cyclical. It's structural. Governments are waking up. U.S. launched a $12 billion critical mineral stockpile in 2026, and miners are prioritizing M&A over risky greenfields. The powder keg's lit, folks. But here's where the opportunity shines for the juniors and mid-tiers hustling in this space. These aren't pie-in-the-sky dreamers. They're crews targeting real assets in the right spots. Let's run through a quick hit list of players positioning for the crunch. Think exploration, development, and even majors pivoting hard. Starting with the explorers and developers. American Copper Development Corp., ACDC, is zeroed in on the Lordsburg project in New Mexico, chasing large porphyry copper-gold systems with fresh leadership sharpening their strategy. Arizona Sonoran Copper Company is reviving the old Cactus Mine in Arizona for heap leach cathode production, aiming for mid-tier status. B Metals Corp's got the Pangini project in Zambia, plus gold in Japan, backed by B2Gold Pros. Coppernico Metals Inc. is on the massive Sombrero land in Peru's Las Bambas belt for copper-gold skarns and porphyries. Copper Giant Resources, ex-Libero, holds Colombia's huge Mocoa copper moly deposit, one of the biggest undeveloped in the Americas. Cygnus Metals Limited is breathing life into Quebec's Chibougamau district with a hub-and-spoke model for multiple copper-gold deposits. Ardini Resource Development Corp., fresh off their first gold pour in Mongolia, is advancing the giant Zunmod moly copper project and high-grade hits at Kuvenkar. Highland Copper Co.'s Copperwood in Michigan is fully permitted for underground mining, eyeing U.S. supply chains. Kincora Copper Limited is drilling Tier 1 potential in Australia's Macquarie Arc at Trundle and Condobolin, next to North Parks. Midnight Sun Mining Corp's Solwezi in Zambia sits right by First Quantum's Kansanshi, targeting oxide and sulfide copper. Osisko Metals Inc. is restarting Quebec's historic Gaspé copper for the 2030s green rush. Solaris Resources Inc.'s Warintza in Ecuador is a high-grade porphyry beast, drawing big bucks for fast growth. XXIX Metals Corp., 29 Metals on ASX, runs producing mines like Golden Grove and Capricorn with high-grade copper and byproducts. And for the big dog, Tech Resources Limited, now pure-play transition metals after ditching coal, runs the massive QB2 in Chile as one of the world's top copper producers. That's the hidden lesson in this copper tale, and it's one every miner worth their salt lives by. This deficit isn't about bad luck, it's about decades of underinvestment, meeting unstoppable demand. The smart teams are spotting the gaps, engineering solutions, and allocating capital without the baggage. It's not glamorous, but it's how you turn a global crunch into your edge. The story's bigger than a ticker. It's about the grind, the vision, and the payoff. But if you want the full scoop, the deficit breakdowns, demand disruptors, supply risks, and deep dives on these companies, head over to juniormining.gold for the exclusive report. We put the link below in the show notes. This is Dusty Nugget. Sometimes mining isn't about striking it rich overnight. It's about seeing the long game, taking the smart risks, and engineering your way to the win. Stay bold, stay scrappy, and I'll see you at the next drill site. You can learn more at juniormining.gold. Please like, subscribe, and visit our socials or our Substack for more content.